Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our meeting for February, what is the date? 3rd, 2026. You guys know I have a problem with dates when I run these meetings. So welcome to our Board of Education meeting for North Ridgeville City Schools. Today is February 3rd, 2026. If you are able, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Drakely?
Here.
Mr. Haynes?
Here.
Mrs. McCarthy?
Here.
Mr. Vaca? And Mr. Wampelman?
Here.
Finalization of the agenda.
The agenda is final as presented.
Thank you. We'll move into Superintendent Treasurer's report.
Okay, excellent. We have two brief updates for the board tonight. We will begin with Ms. Jackie Vance, who will give you your annual funding, federal funding update.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi. So as Superintendent Serio mentioned, this is an annual requirement that we report to the community our four main types of federal funding. And the four federal funding types that I report on to you is our Title I, Title IIA, Title IV, and IDEA Part B. And so Title I is about improving basic programs. Primarily, these funds are used, or we are receiving them based on free and reduced lunches, a basic percentage based on the number of students that we have that qualify. The money is used specifically to improve basic programming. And here in North Ridgeville City Schools, as noted, the amounts that we have for this year shows a slight decrease from the previous school year. And these funds are specifically used for salary and benefits for our Title I teachers that are specifically at Liberty Elementary School. Our Title IIA supporting effective instruction. This is also based on a percentage that is divided up for local districts. The money is used to focus on effective instruction. Professional development is a common use in this area, consultants and workshops. In addition to that, our funds are used for a portion of salaries and professional development, along with including non-pubs here in our district, which includes St. Pete's. Here you will see there on the previous, I'm sorry, Mr. Hieronymus, there is a decrease from the previous year. We went from 119,000 down to 90,000 for the current school year. The next is Title IV, which is student support and academic enrichment. This is funding that is also set aside based on state funding and a percentage for all districts in the state. We support students to encourage academic enrichment opportunities, and also 15% of this fund needs to be set aside for use of technology. We specifically use these funds in the district to expand STEM or STEAM offerings within the district. And you can see there was a slight decrease of this from 36 to 34,000 from last year to this year. The final two funds that we'll report on is IDEA Part B, Special Education Funds, and that is specifically K-12. For this, it's based on the number of percentage of students that we have that qualify with a disability and what their disabilities are, as each category provides different funding federally. We use these funds specifically to pay the salaries and benefits of intervention specialists throughout the district. There is a slight decrease on this one also. All of our funds were decreased this year overall. And then the final federal fund that we receive is IDEA Part B, but this is for our early childhood instruction. So this is our preschool programming. This number is always slightly lower overall. And this one actually had a slight increase from the previous year. But generally, relatively the same. And we use this also specifically to pay for salaries and benefits of the paraprofessionals who work at our preschool. Finally, I just provided you a brief summary that shows to you the total amounts that we've received during the 24-25 school year comparatively to this year, and noting the overall decrease that we saw. And we had anticipated, based on reports federally, that there would be a decrease. And so I wanted that to be noted in general for my report. So that is it. So if there's no questions.
Are these numbers, this is showing 25-26 school years?
So this is our current school year.
Okay, and then
24-25 have been last year. And then they're reflecting a decrease.
Okay.
Did I represent it correctly?
One is it flipped? You have 1.7 for this year, 1.6 for last year. But it should be flipped, right?
Maybe it is flipped.
It's okay, I'm dyslexic, I see it first.
Miss McCarthy, I will correct that.
I just wanted to make sure we were,
Yeah.
like I wasn't.
Yes, no, you are correct. I
Okay.
must have flipped them.
Yeah, no problem. And then you said is it title 2A that we get for free and reduced? No, what's that?
that's Title I.
Title 1 is free and reduced. Have we seen an increase or a decrease in families applying for that benefit?
I can't answer that exactly,
Okay,
but I know that it is something that we really strongly encourage families to complete the application for. And I think that sometimes we identify that there is a rollover that happens. If you've applied previously, generally that will follow you. So the application process is a little bit easier.
Yeah, till October.
But we do find there are families that assume they're not going to qualify, but they may actually qualify. So we want to encourage families where I think many years ago, it used to be the norm that many people would fill out the application and they would either qualify or not qualify. And now I think what we're having is families make that decision on their own. And we really want to encourage them to fill it out because you may actually qualify and not realize it.
right. Do we know if that's a cumbersome form to fill out? Is it difficult?
No, I mean, you just fill out your students and your income.
Yeah,
Household
I think that it appears to be cumbersome. It's small print, but you can do it electronically now, which makes it a lot easier.
Okay,
I think it's just more the time that it takes to do that.
gotcha.
Yeah.
And is there a deadline for filling that out if they don't fill it out by a certain time?
You have to fill it out prior to the last day of school. For it to, well,
Like this year, prior to the last day of school,
for fees.
For fees?
because it's either free or reduced. And so it impacts whether you get a free lunch or do you get a free lunch and reduced fees.
Okay. Okay, so if a family wanted to fill that out this year for going forward,
For the remainder of
right,
the year.
if they qualify, their child or children could potentially get a free or reduced meal and free or reduced fees
Correct.
moving forward.
Correct.
If they wait until just before the end of the school year, the only benefit they're receiving is the fees.
Potentially
correct?
for the fee.
Potentially for the
But the benefit is that they have the process done and hopefully that would carry over for next year unless there was a.
It would start them off the next school year
It's okay.
till that rollover period expires.
And then where can they find the form if families want to participate?
The form is on the website
We have it on the
under food services, right?
Yes.
website. It's in the Pay Schools portal,
Okay.
and there's hard copies in every office of every building.
Perfect, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for noting my error and I'll fix that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vance. Our next report is for the board. I asked Mr. Pritt to join me talking to not only you, but our public a little bit about the crazy winter weather we've had this January and really how that has impacted us. And before Mr. Pritt gets started, I just want to note that our communications director, Roberta Shaw, has been working very closely with Dana Hoffman and the city as a whole regarding communication. So not only communication to the residents regarding clearing safe pathways and walkways for students, but also communicating when there are concerns. And one great example was Some of the businesses on Center Ridge Road were struggling. The city did go out quickly to address some of those crosswalks to be sure that our kids could cross safely. So we're very grateful for them. At the city council meeting last night, Mayor Corcoran did speak a lot about the salt shortage that we're also facing that has just kind of added on to some of these challenges that we've been facing with the unprecedented amount of snow that we've received. But the salt shortage right now, he is expecting that the earliest the city will see a delivery of salt is about 3 to 4 weeks out, which impacts us because we do get our salt from the city. So I know that Seth Perry and Carly Schroeder and the entire maintenance operations team are trying to use what we have very sparingly, but in places where we know are high traffic, and just being sure that we are taking care of those areas to avoid any injuries. So one of the other items that the mayor spoke of last night was the city ordinance. And what that ordinance says is that the residents are required to clear the snow from their pathways, so their sidewalks that are specific to their homes within 12 hours of the storm. And in some cases, residents have been cited for that. So just making sure that is something that our residents are paying attention to. And also that we have a lot of student groups, volunteer groups that are willing to help. And if there are residents who are in need of assistance along Bainbridge or along those areas where we have high student traffic, please reach out to our high school as we do have groups that are more than willing and happy to help our residents in need. So Mr. Pritt, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about calamity days, hours, and what that all means to us today.
Why, thank you. As Superintendent Casario said, we're having a winter, and it's been a little bit since we've had a winter, particularly one like this. So I think this is just good information to get out to the community, to get out to all of you, especially since some of these things have changed in the last handful of years about the amount of time students are in school and what needs to be made up and what doesn't need to be made up. So the first thing is the state uses the term calamity, and I think that's a better term. We all call them snow days, but the fact of the matter is school can be closed for any number of reasons, and it be a calamity day. So a lot of our days this year have been temperature related. You could close for lack of heat, you could close for illness. All of those fall under the term calamity. So I think that's probably the better term and the reason that we're using that. That second point is really important. There is no if then that happens in determining whether or not to call a calamity day, quite honestly. It is multi-factor. There are lots of pieces that go in. It's not like we look at a special number and say, if the temperature hits this or the wind chill hits this, we're going to take the day off. So it's important to know that there is no if then, and that last piece is extremely important. It's our desire that we're open every day. We only have so much time with students, and that's something that generally we can't get back. So if we're closing, we're losing that instructional time with kids. And ultimately, with that being the reason that all of us do what we do, it's important for us to be open. When we look at consideration, there are a lot of factors that weigh into whether or not we need to close for a day. So we've listed some of these factors that we kind of balance against one another. The first and foremost is always student safety. We can't get students here safely. We're not going to be effective in educating them, when they arrive. We look at a lot of advisors and warnings, see what the weather is looking for. And then we look at that in conjunction with that forecast piece. Can we get students to school? Can we get them out of school before the storm comes? What we don't want to do is create a situation where we get kids in our schools and then can't get them home. So we look at all of those types of things. Road conditions is major, and that's not just road conditions here in North Ridgeville, but we need to remember that our staff comes in from lots of other places outside of just North Ridgeville themselves. So what do things look like in Cuyahoga County? What do things look like in Medina County? What do things look like in the rest of Lorain County? And then obviously the lack of heat, power, and water and phones, those help to make a decision a little firmer too. That's not to say that if we lose water in a building for an hour, we're going to close the building. We've certainly had times this year where we've had students and maybe we've lost water for an hour, but we knew it was coming back on. So in a case like that, you can stay open. It's about, again, knowing what's coming and making the best informed decision you can make. We look on the right side, we recognize that having calamity days is a challenge for our families. And we need to weigh that against every decision that we make. We know that not every parent has the ability to stay home with the child because the school has decided to close. That second bullet point is extremely important as well. We know that a lot of our students, if they're not here in school, may not have the opportunity to have a breakfast or have a lunch. This is their sole places to get those. So we want to make sure that we're keeping that in mind as we balance all of this out. We look at planned activities, what might be on our agenda for the day. Do we have large groups coming in from maybe outside of the community? We weigh that into our factors. And then again, we believe that instruction is most effective when students are at first. So it's really a weighing game against one another. So when we do decide that we need to close, our goal is to always let families know as soon as we can, because we know that they're going to need to be making additional arrangements for their children in a lot of cases. And that's where the work of Brooke goes in a long way, is getting those messages out. From the time that we make that decision to the time that people's phones start ringing or vibrating or whatever's happening, a lot of times it's literally minutes. So we'd like to make those calls as early as we can. We don't make these decisions in isolation. These decisions are made in conjunction with roads, they're made in conjunctions with other county superintendents, they're made in conjunction with our own maintenance staff. We knew that we had a big snow coming in last weekend. Our conversation started 2 days before that with, if we get this much snow, how much time do you need to clear the lines? And those things factor into these discussions that we've had. And then obviously we like to communicate using our Parent Square and share it through local media. So I always plug our Parent Square, and if parents don't have their information updated in there, they're going to want to make sure, because that's going to be the fastest way to get all that information. So when we do have to close, there's a number of things that have to change from what most of us are used to under the old system. Presently, we've been closed 7 student days. So just kind of put that into perspective for you. Of the 177 or 178 scheduled student days this year, we have had 7 closed because of weather. In the past, and this is where things have started to change in the last handful of years, the state required that anytime a student missed more than 5 days because of calamity, they were required to make up any additional time over those 5 days. The last handful of years, they've changed that guidance. And what they say now is that students are not required to make up those days for the state, as long as they have enough time in the school year. So they haven't gone to clock hours. We're going to look at clock hours here in just a minute and where we stand in relation to that. So in theory, the state says, as long as you're above the minimum number of hours, you're okay. We have a slightly different view on that because, again, as we said, if students aren't here, students aren't learning. That's less time for us to go over standards. Each district does have the ability to make up days. That's generally guided by the negotiated agreement. We have language in our own negotiated agreement that talks about that. On our calendar every year by board policy, we identify before the year starts when those makeup days would take place. So if you look at the bottom left-hand corner of any district-approved calendar, whether it's this year's or whether it's 26, 27, or 27, 28, down at the bottom left-hand corner, they will tell you when those calamity days are scheduled. And again, it's not something we've had to use a ton of. I can think of using them one other time in my career. And we all know that I've been here a very long time. But for this current year, those are May 22nd and then the 26th to the 29th if they would be needed. And then for our staff is a little bit different because depending on which work group you are in determines what happens once you move beyond those 5 calamity days. In some cases, staff is required to report to work. In some cases, staff is required to report to work if those days are made up. So it depends on which group you are a part of as to what your contract actually says. So here is the $1 million question about school hours and where we fall. So you'll find a couple of things with this. That second category is important because the second category talks about the school day length. So depending on what grade you're in and depending on what building you're in, your school day length is a little bit different. And that has to do with both the number of hours in the student day, but it also has to do with the number of hours that count towards your instructional time. So those are a little bit different depending on where you are by grade level and everything else. And then you'll see actually what the number of hours required is. So if you're 7th grade and above in high school, the state requires you to have 1,001 hours in a minimum school year. If you are at an elementary level, you're looking at a minimum of 910 hours in a school year. So where this gets weird for some people is you look at a building like this, that's 3 through 8. They actually have 2 different amount of times that students have to be in session within the same building. Same issues over at high tech. So that third column there where it talks about total hours per year, if we miss no more hours this year, that is the number of hours that we would have in this current school year. So that has already backed out those 7 days that we have been out of session. And then really the important column, because nobody wants to sit and count hours, is that column on the far right, which is color coded for you. And it looks at the number of days that could still be missed before we would hit the minimum state hours per OEE. So the group that is closest to that are our current seniors, because current seniors year is a little bit shorter anyways. So they've got just under 3 more days that they could be off where they meet that threshold for minimum school hours for the year. The next group that falls in line would be our 9 through 12 at the high school. They're just under 7 days for me. And then you can see how far that goes, all the way up to, NRAC 3 through 6 could potentially miss another 26 days of school before they would fall below that threshold. Obviously, at that point in time, you're talking about students missing 30 or 40 days, the equivalent of a quarter. Not best practice. I think we could all agree with that. So where does that leave us for right now? We know we've got a couple things happening. First, as far as staff goes, we know that the staff currently, certified staff, has 1 day that they're going to have to make up for their contract. We have not scheduled that yet, and that's going to be dependent on, do we have additional days from the rest of winter, early spring that they're going to have to make up, because that would drive that when we make that time up. And then as of right now, we have made the decision that we're not going to have students make up any time unless we miss additional time. So right now they're at their 7th day. If we were to get to an 8th day for some reason, then we would look to make those days up starting under the previous times that we talked about, starting 22nd of May. And again, for us, that's really about making sure that our teachers have that time to deliver that instruction, that students have covered their bases so that they're ready to go to the next grade. So a lot of information. Again, a little bit different than what we're used to or what many of us remember coming through the school system. So are there questions that I can answer for you?
It's not necessarily a question, David, but could you emphasize the part that we just spoke about in terms of, I can see people watching this, later as entertainment and seeing the part that, their student can miss 26 days and not be, under the time or over the, whatever, the time. But if you could re-emphasize the importance of why an 8th calamity day would make us make that up.
So when we look at the fact that students have already missed 7 days, we're talking about students missing 40 some hours of school already. In some cases, we looked at the second semester today, but the 3rd quarter itself is only about 42 days long as it is. So we're talking about students missing 15 to 20% of the school days already in a single quarter. It's important for us to make sure that the teachers have the time to cover the content, to cover the standards that the state say we need to cover before those students move on to their next grade level. Knowing about how many classes that we have, how many subjects we have that just build upon one another, we don't feel like we continue just to say, it's okay, the weather's bad, you don't need to make that time up. So we want to make sure that our kids have the best opportunity they can to be successful in the next grade level. And we believe that happens when they're here with our staff.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course.
How does that attendance work for personal absences? And does it vary per student if they have absences throughout the year for themselves?
So as far as these 7 days, it doesn't count against a student at all. It's as if school never occurred on that particular day. If we were to go above that and we were to start to have to make up time at the end of the school year, it would be treated just like any other school day. So if a parent had to call off because they had something happen, it would just count towards that time for the year itself. In most cases, if we're talking about a day or so, probably would affect 99.8% of students, because most of them aren't in a spot where we need to worry about them being that close to a threshold of time missed. That makes sense. Anything else?
Thank you.
Appreciate your time, and we will obviously keep you posted. Thanks. Thank you.
Did anybody want to ask about parking? That was a question that.
Yeah, so I'll just ask about the parking for the inquiring minds in the community. About the parking passes this year as well as the fees and where that money is allocated to use for.
So parking passes this year, are slightly different than what we've done in the past. So in the past, we charged a flat fee for the entire school year. This year, we actually went to a semester fee. And the reason for that was with the construction going on, we didn't know at the beginning of the year what we were going to have for parking. So we knew that what we were initially told was that our student lots, our additional staff lots would not be ready to start the school year. So when that decision was made, that was the premise that we were working under. We were fortunate in that they were able to get those lots done a little sooner. So we sold those by the semester. Starting in the second semester, we have relocated our high school staff over to the Pitts lot. And the students, for the most part, have moved out of the temporary lots into our paved lots, lot C and D. We still have some overflow in our temporary lots out front. As far as fees go, those fees are used for a couple of things. Number one, if you remember back at the beginning of the year, we actually added a parking attendant for the first time in a whole long time. So that was a new position that we had to bring on in order to make sure that everybody was where they were supposed to be. And then the remainder of that money then goes into a principal's account. So the principal actually uses that money and can only spend it on students at the high school level. So that is how all of that works itself out.
Thank you.
David, while you're there, do you want to speak a little bit to, and I know Roxanne, you talked about it too, like the shortage of salt and that kind of thing, but the efforts that our facilities crew is making to make sure our paths and driveways and parking lots are safe for students.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. So our staff generally starts about 4 a.m. on a day when the snow falls. And they have been working overtime and double time and everything that you can imagine. People think about this building because we have students, they forget that we have 4 other buildings in the district also, that they're responsible for plowing, salting, and all of that stuff. So their focus is to hit the critical areas as far as salt and all that stuff goes. So they're working on all the sidewalks and all of those pieces. We had some issues last week and that they got a lot of the snow cleared out. The challenge is that once you get cars in parking lots again, you can't keep plowing. So, they did their best to get our schools open, and they've done that. And then with the time that they've had since that time, they have done some of the cleanup work to make those other pieces happen. They have done an incredible job knowing how few of them there are, for knowing how many parking lots and how many acres, quite honestly, of parking that we have. When we look back to last year, we have probably added some parking area for sure. I think a lot of our people forget that a lot of our students last year parked on gravel lots too. They're just closer to our buildings. So they've done a good job moving, students. Ms. Schroeder and her team, along with high school, have done a good job of getting students into better spots to help speed that process up and put them in areas where it's a little easier to maintain. So it has certainly been a challenge this year, as it has been with most of Northeast Ohio. I know we did dinner last night where we went to eat. You still couldn't find lines in a parking lot.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge for sure. And with salt shortage coming, it's going to be a challenge for a little while longer, right?
I do have one more question in regards to student safety and concerns. Knowing that all the snow and ice and salt and everything, when students and just people in general come into the buildings, and then our floors, our tile gets wet, and we have limited resources with our cleaning and our maintenance staff. Are we bringing in extra runoff rugs, or what are the steps we're taking to make sure that our floors are not ice skating rinks for students?
That's a great question. So depending on the building that you're in, you're going to see, people out there mopping is the first easiest way to get that off.
Yeah.
You're going to see the air movers, blowing air across those floors to get them to dry as quickly as they can. And you will see the additional mats and walk-off mats and things like that are being brought in. The challenge with any of our school is the vast majority of our students all arrive at the same time.
Right.
So all of that tracks in at the same time, and it takes a little bit of time to get that squared away. So, but I have seen administrators with brooms and mops right there next to our custodians, making sure that they're making it as safe as they can, as quickly as they can.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
Was there any other questions now that we've second round of other questions? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tripp. That concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Superintendent Casari. Now is announcements and hearing of the public. Does the Board of Education have any announcements this evening? No? Anybody would like to address the Board of Education? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. And we'll start with a communications report. Mr. Grigsby.
Thank you. It is recommended that the Board of Education accept the following gifts of appreciation. The $428.35 were raised through a Dying to Donate fundraiser at the Chipotle for the class of 2027. ComCorp Industries donated $1,500 to the NRHS track team. And at the NRHS choir concert, $300 was donated by families and community members. Adam Darsh donated 300 Chladni plates to the NRAC Music Department. And as always, we thank our community for their tremendous support of our schools and students.
Thank you, Mr. Grigsby. We're going to move on to a human resources report. Mr. Haynes.
Thank you, Ms. Clarkson. We have several items to consider in the Human Resources Report. 8 NREA supplemental contracts, 10 non-NREA supplemental contracts, 6 unpaid volunteer recognitions. This is the first reading for these items. The second reading for consideration or approval will be on February 17th regular meeting. This concludes this portion of the Human Resources Report.
Okay. That will conclude our consent agenda. We're going to move into other board business now. And we start with an additional human resources report. Mr. Haynes.
Thank you. We have a few more items to consider on the Human Resources Report. 1 administrative contract, 2 support staff resignations, 3 support staff substitute resignations. I move to approve the Human Resources items in 1 reading.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Haynes, second by Mr. Grigsby. Is there, or are there, I'm sorry, any questions? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Haynes,
Yes.
Mr. Grigsby,
Yes.
Mrs. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Boswell, absent, Mr. Wampelman.
Yes.
All right, and you can round out that report, Mr. Haynes. It's the Mr. Haynes
All
show tonight.
We have 1 more item to consider on the Human Resources Report. 1 unpaid volunteer recognition. I move to approve the Human Resources items in 1 reading.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Haynes, second by Mr. Wampelman. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Haynes.
Yep.
Mr. Wampelman,
Yes.
Mrs. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Boswell,
We can call him Mr. Grigsby, although his name's
Grigsby.
Yeah. It's
Yes.
great. Tackle.
Okay, it is now time to enter into executive session to discuss the appointment, employment dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, compensation of public employees, and matters related to negotiations of public employees. There will be no action to follow. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Haynes, seconded by Mr. Wampelman. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Haynes,
Yes.
Mr. Wampelman.
Yes.
Mr. Grigsby,
Yes.
Mrs. McCarthy.
Yes. Great, thank you. 6:33. Thank you all for coming. Wish you a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.